What is up, guys? We're going to be taking a look at this lab, SameSite Strict bypass via client-side redirect. For a full breakdown of what exactly SameSite Strict means, you can check out the previous lab where we explain the three different attributes we can set for SameSite. Essentially, SameSite Strict means it's not going to be possible to send a cross-site request and have inclusion of the cookies. So if a victim lands on the attacker-controlled domain, although we can manipulate the user's browser into sending a post request, because that post request is being sent cross-site, the victim's cookies are not going to be included, meaning we can't make use of cross-site request forgery. However, if the post request originates from the same origin, so the request originates from the web app with which the victim is authenticated, well, it's no longer a cross-site request. Now it's a same-site request, and the cookie values such as session token are going to be included in the post request. So that's the premise of how we're going to bypass SameSite equals strict. We need the request to originate from the web app rather than an attacker-controlled domain. So overall, this is a fairly cool lab because it's going to leverage a chain of exploits. Many vulnerabilities we find in the wild are not simply isolated vulnerabilities. Here is an example of chaining vulnerabilities together to achieve the desired result. Now, if we log in using username Wiener, password Peter, and we head to the change email functionality, the following post request is generated. Post request to / my account change email. We can see in the post request body, we have the new email that we're setting, wiener@newuser.net, and then we have a second parameter, submit equals 1, which is required for the change email functionality. The first thing to notice here is that there is no cross-site request forgery token. Of course, we need the session token, but there's no cross-site request forgery protection here, aside from the fact that the cookie has been set to SameSite Strict. We can demonstrate this by looking at the login post request to / login, post request body, username equals Wiener, password equals Peter. Notice in the response, we have a set cookie, we have our session token, we then have additional attributes set on the cookie. We have secure, HTTP only, and most importantly, we have SameSite equals strict. So although this is technically vulnerable to cross-site request forgery because there's no cross-site request forgery token, if the victim lands on the attacker-controlled domain, any subsequent post request made by the user's browser is not going to include the session token, therefore it's not going to change the user's email. So we need to work around the fact that SameSite equals strict is set on the cookie. The next thing we're going to do is visit a blog post, and we're going to post a comment and simply explore the functionality of posting a comment on a blog post. So we'll call it test comment. We'll provide the additional details we need here. We'll choose post comment, and in the background, we're going to harvest the request with burp. By the way, notice there was a redirect. After posting the comment, we were taken to a page that informed us our comment had been posted and that we would be redirected shortly. Let's take a look at that in burp proxy. So stage 1, we have the post request to / post / comment. We can see the details we provided in the post request body. For example, comment equals test comment. We then get a 302 found response, and notice the header in the found response is directing our browser to / post comment confirmation. We then have a query string with a post ID parameter, post ID equals 1. So the browser then visits that second link. Let's take a look at what happens here. We then get a HTML response. You may have noticed that message we saw in the browser in the HTML response. Your comment has been submitted. You will be redirected momentarily. Now, if we take a look above that, we can see some script tags. First of all, we're pulling in / resources.js comment confirmation redirect.js. So this is a JavaScript file that is handling the redirect functionality. And then we can see we're calling the JavaScript function redirect on confirmation, and we're providing the argument / post. And this particular JavaScript function has been taken from that JavaScript file that we pulled in. So of course, as soon as the browser sees script source followed by a JavaScript file, the next thing it's going to do is launch a GET request for the JavaScript file so that it can execute that JavaScript function. We see that here in burp. we have a GET request to /resources.js comment confirmation redirect.js, and we see that some JavaScript is returned in the response. So we have this redirect on confirmation function being defined. It's going to take an argument which has been given the name blog path. And just as a recap, we can see what that was set to. Redirect on confirmation, the argument /post is provided as the argument for that function. So we know blog path equals a string /post. We then have a set timeout function. So this is going to be a code snippet that will be executed after 3 seconds. That's how long we were waiting on that HTML page before the redirect. That just gives the user a few seconds to read the message that they're going to be redirected. We then have a constant variable URL, and that's going to be bound to the value of window.location. So that's everything in the URL bar in the browser window. It's going to be instantiated into this URL class. So that's going to give us some helper methods for manipulating that string that's in the URL bar of the browser. We then have a second constant variable post ID. This is making use of one of those helper methods. So for example, it can look at the URL string in the browser and have a look explicitly at the parameters after the query string. Then it's going to retrieve the value of the parameter with the key post ID. So in our case, post ID is 1. Then after 3 seconds, it's going to set window.location. So it's going to change the URL in the browser to blog path, which we know is /post. We then have / appended to the string. We then have the post ID, which we've already extracted from the query string. So if the post we're commenting on has an ID of 1, then we're going to get sent to /post /1. If it has an ID of 4, we're going to get sent to /post /4. So the idea is we get a short confirmation message that the comment has been posted. We then get redirected to the main page for that particular blog post. Now, what is the primary key takeaway of everything we've just looked at? The key takeaway is that the browser is redirecting the user based on a parameter in the query string. It says value of post ID. So if we can get the victim to visit the redirect URL with the post ID parameter set, we have some measure of control over where the victim is going to be sent next. So instead of post ID equals 1, we can inject our own value for the post ID key. And we know that that value is ultimately going to end up as part of the string which window.location is set to. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because this is a request originating with the web app. So the idea is victim visits attacker controlled domain. Attacker controlled domain does not send victim immediately to the / change email route. First of all, the victim is sent to this redirect route, which is on the web app itself. The redirect route then sends the victim where we want the victim to go. But now this is a SameSite request. It's originating from the web app. It's going to the web app. So now the fact that SameSite is set to strict doesn't matter. It's a SameSite request. The session token is going to be included with the post request, allowing us to potentially change the victim's email. Now, this is just a concept at this stage. What we need to be able to do is get from this GET request. So this is a GET request to the redirect link at /post comment confirmation with post ID parameter set as part of the query string. We need to be able to get from here specifically to my account / change email. And for initial experimentation, let's just see if we can hit that my account route. So just to be clear, we start with this redirect link. We tamper with the value of the post ID parameter, which is going to change where the browser gets redirected to. Our end objective is to be able to reach the / my account, because now this is really a SameSite request. It originates with the web app redirects the browser now ends up at / my account and happily sends the cookies because it's the SameSite request. Let's just see this again. We are going to visit /post /comment /confirmation post ID equals 1. So this is going to be the screen we should see after posting a comment on the blog post with the ID of 1. Let's take a look at this. We see an interstitial. Thank you for your comment. You'll be redirected momentarily. Then we end up at /post /1. And we know that that 1 itself has been taken from the value of the post ID parameter. So we have the ability to inject after post /. This is where we combine a third type of vulnerability, which is going to be the directory traversal. Because we know we're ultimately going to end up at /post /1. We actually really want to be up 2 directories from this because we want / my account. So we go up 1 directory with a directory traversal sequence. We go up a second directory Now we should be at the root directory and we're going to visit my account. So this is the basic idea. Let's head back to our original redirect link. We're going to inject into that. So now instead of post ID equals 1, we're going to inject at this point 2 traversal sequences followed by my account. So we should first of all see the confirmation page. We'll be told that we will be redirected shortly, but then hopefully we're going to end up at the my account section. You will be redirected momentarily. We've ended up at my account. This is a same site request because we've hit the web app and the web app has now redirected us to /my account. Okay, at this stage, we have all of the pieces of the puzzle. It's time to hit the exploit server. We are given a code snippet that we can use in the Portswigger walkthrough. As usual, we need to replace part of this with the lab ID. So instead of your lab ID, let's paste in our lab ID. The email, I'm going to change the %40 to the non-URL encoded @sign. I have received comments that the URL encoding of the @sign doesn't necessarily break the lab functionality. In my experience, it has, so I prefer to use the vanilla @sign. Could be the difference with using Firefox and Chrome. Portswigger recommends using Chrome for most of these labs, but I like Firefox, so I use Firefox generally. So it could be a browser difference. I usually change this particular @ to the non-URL encoded @sign. Now, when we get to the ampersand in the query string, we need to URL encode this as %26. And the reason is if we don't URL encode the ampersand sign, we end up breaking out of the post ID parameter in the original query string. Now, that might sound slightly confusing. I'm going to explain exactly what we mean by that shortly, but let's just see the exploit in action. So the flow of this is as follows. Victim lands on attacker controlled domain. Attacker control domain directs the user's browser to that redirect link. So this is a cross-site request, but we don't need the cookie at this stage. We simply need the web app redirect functionality. So the victim's browser goes to /post comment confirmation, post ID equals 1. We then have that directory traversal exploit. So the victim's browser is then going to redirect the victim, not to my account this time, but specifically to my account change email. And then we can provide the parameters as part of the query string. So we have email equals owned@websecurityacademy.net. We then have the ampersand because we need a second parameter, which is submit equals 1. Notice also that this is a GET request. This is really another type of exploit or vulnerability with the web app. Originally, when we changed the email, we used a POST request. Apparently, we're able to use a GET request. So long as we provide the relevant parameters as part of the query string, we're able to change the victim's email, making use of a GET request. So you can see just looking at the JavaScript again, when the redirect occurs, it occurs via setting window.location to the specified string, which is going to result in a GET request rather than a POST request. So even at this stage, the web app could prevent this particular exploit from occurring just by not handling the GET request for the change email functionality. Should really just be the POST request that's doing that. So in a way, there's 4 different vulnerabilities here. We have the cross-site request forgery vulnerability. We have the path traversal vulnerability. If there was a modern routing system coded in this web app, then this traversal sequence is not going to work, simply going to return a 404. We then have a third vulnerability, which is the GET request doing the job of a POST request without any prevention from the web app. And then finally, we have this issue of the redirect being open to manipulation by the attacker. So we have 4 separate vulnerabilities that are chained together to create this exploit. And this is very often how exploits work in the wild. You'll find something that's a little bit off. You'll find something else that's a little bit off, maybe something else. You can start combining all of these issues to generate a single exploit. If the owners of the web app fix any one of these 4 vulnerabilities, then all of a sudden this particular attack vector is no longer available. So we are going to store this code. We'll choose deliver exploit to victim. And we get the flag, congratulations, you solved the lab. Now, let's just talk very briefly about why this %26 is necessary. So this is the URL encoded ampersand. Keep in mind that we really have one GET request smuggled inside of another GET request to some extent. So originally, this submit equals 1 is actually smuggled inside the post ID parameter. And if we use an unencoded ampersand, we actually break out of that first parameter. It's then not going to be included in the second GET request. As we discussed earlier, this parameter submit equals 1 is required for the change email functionality. Now, just in case that doesn't make any sense, let's change the %26 to the non-URL encoded ampersand. This is what we typically see in a query string. Let's choose store and let's go to view exploit. Let's pretend we're the victim. Let's see where we end up being redirected. So we choose view exploit. Now, eventually we get sent to this particular error page. We get a JSON response, missing parameter submit. Let's take a look at where we're directed. We're directed to change email equals owned@websecurityacademy.net. Notice it's a GET request, but we're missing that submit parameter because we didn't URL encode the ampersand. So remember, the initial request that the victim's browser makes to the web app is a visit to that redirect link. And remember that the redirection is based on everything that's inside the post ID parameter. But if we don't URL encode the ampersand sign, then what you see highlighted on the screen right now is what is inside the post ID parameter. It doesn't include ampersand submit equals 1 because that's actually part of a separate parameter. So we don't actually want that submit parameter on the initial request. We want that all included in the initial post ID parameter, and then that entire value is taken by the JavaScript to produce the route that's going to be redirected to. In order to do that, we need to make sure it's all part of a single parameter initially, which we do by URL encoding the ampersand sign to %26. The JavaScript takes everything that's highlighted now as part of the post ID parameter and uses that to generate the next GET request, the redirect request. Obviously, that redirect request then looks at the %26 URL, decodes it, and we then have two separate parameters for the resulting GET request. We have the new email, and then we have submit equals 1, which is required by the web app in order to process the email change. It's kind of ironic when you think about how pedantic the web app is at requiring that meaningless submit equals 1, but at the same time, the web app doesn't even care whether it's a GET request or a POST request. This is an example of web security gone wrong. Mitigations here. Well, interestingly, we said that there are 4 different vulnerabilities taking place, and you can mitigate any of the 4 vulnerabilities in order to protect against this particular attack. Ideally, you would just mitigate against all 4 of them for the most security. So let's just work through them one by one. First of all, we have the missing cross-site request forgery token. As soon as we add a cross-site request forgery token, we've actually protected against this cross-site request forgery attack. So mitigation number 1, add a cross-site request forgery token. Mitigation number 2, use a proper backend routing system so that the app is not vulnerable to directory traversal sequences. You could even have either some kind of whitelisting mechanism on the back end that only allows visitation of certain routes, or you could go for the blacklist approach and make sure traversal sequences are not allowed in any of the links sent to the back end. So there are numerous ways of mitigating against this. Majority of web app frameworks are going to have a decent routing system in place where this type of attack is just going to result in a 404 because we haven't explicitly defined a route with a traversal sequence. So we're not going to get any meaningful response back from the web app aside from a 404. So that's mitigation number 2. Mitigation number 3 is similar. We actually want to whitelist our redirects so we can explicitly check that the result of the redirect is to /post followed by the integer of a post. If that particular redirect is resolving to something that's not /post /integer, then it means something's gone wrong. So we want to whitelist the types of routes that we allow, and everything else is going to be implicitly blacklisted. That's mitigation number 3. And finally, mitigation number 4, there's a root vulnerability here where a GET request is performing post request functionality. So if my account /change email receives a GET request, it should just be responding saying this particular method is not allowed. You need to use a post request if you want to change your email on this route. So you can see 4 different vulnerabilities chained together to generate this exploit, and we can mitigate against any one of them, and we stop this particular attack completely dead in its tracks. All right, that's pretty much it for this lab. Pretty cool lab overall. Thanks very much for checking out the content, and I'll catch you guys in the next lab.